Chapter 81. White Knight in Plot Armor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Excuse me. Do you work here? This shop is great, Ben said. In the end, he chose the safe option A. It was the only one that didn't seem extreme. Although, he was surprised it was divine because the line seemed too plain. Ben didn't often use such an ordinary opener, but he knew a line was only as useful as its result. Waiting for the professional beauty to respond, Ben stood near the shop window in the mall corridor as talkative shoppers passed by. Already having guessed what she would say, he was considering his next move. How should I follow up? It's too bad he got ahead of himself. The woman glanced at Ben, then returned to staring at her clipboard. I'm sorry, sir. I'm working at the moment. If you step inside, a shopping attendant will help you. Target's current attraction level. Disinclined, 0.1, Ben blinked. Seriously? How could that be? Which was correct then? The system soon gave him the answer. Options A and C disappeared, leaving the correct divine line. B. Look at you, pathetic. Your father never believed in you. That's why you're here now. Ben raised his eyebrows, but then his eyes flashed. Wait, isn't there a loophole? So what if I chose wrong? I can just use this line now. I feel bad because it's a bit mean, but the system is saying she wants to hear this. Ben took another step towards the woman. He sneered. Look at you, pathetic. Your father never believed in you. That's why you're here now. The woman turned to Ben again, this time with a chilly glance. Leave now. Or I'll call security. Target's current attraction level. Disgusted, 0.1, Ben gulped. How did I become Nostradamus? What's going on? Is the skill broken? Despite his confusion, he walked away. Ben asked the system why the line didn't work, but it wouldn't answer him. He rubbed his neck, pondering the issue, glancing on occasion at the professional woman who continued to work. While thinking about it, Ben observed a change near her. An older man exited the store in a black suit and spoke to her. It was clear even from a distance that they shared some facial resemblance. Ben couldn't hear their conversation, but it seemed like the man was rebuking her because she lowered her head in shame. Ben sighed, having figured out the problem. Looks like the system won't make it easy. He understood that the system structured the choices so using a wrong line would make it impossible for the correct one to work after. The wrong opener would either drop the target's attraction level or ruin her first impression of him. It seems the best opener isn't always the common sense one. Despite Ben's failure, he didn't let it get him down. Well, the skill is only a boost. If I've learned anything, it's that at the end of nut. It's still going to depend on me. Ben understood that the system was a helper, not a crutch. Ben accepted the lesson. Then, he put it aside and focused on the next issue. White Knight coming in to save the princess from an overbearing father. Ben wanted to flex his muscles at last. He'd been working out religiously, having become even more muscular since his first transformation. He also gained strength, and that wasn't including the strength potion he consumed that boosted it by 20%. Ben wasn't afraid of conflict anymore, having developed the trait of courage. I don't believe I'll lose to a senior citizen. Though, it won't come to that. He'll test me with a challenging task. I'll succeed at the last second with my legendary plot armor. And claim her hand in marriage. He marched his white horse towards the man, who was still chastising the woman. This beauty is being treated unjustly. She's in desperate need of rescue. However, his march ended halfway in a Christopher Reeve moment. When Ben got closer, he noticed that at the man's waist, there was a gun holster. Ben nodded in understanding. It's for her own good. Discipline builds character. He spun a 180 and marched back to seek a new heroic adventure. I've seen the Mythbusters episode, Plot Armor Can't Stop Bullets. Over the next 2 hours, Ben went on 4 Insta-dates in nearby cafes, and gathered a total of 5 numbers from attractive girls. Even though he couldn't sex a phone number, more numbers meant more opportunities. He was satisfied to get those Glengarry leads. It was a strong result, unimaginable to him the last time he was at this mall, when his openers were closer to insults, and he lacked the ability to follow up. It's hard to believe that was only a few weeks ago. Ben sat on an ocean blue mall bench. He was taking a break, tapping the cold steel handrest while reminiscing over recent events. That's when a familiar voice stood out from the passing crowd. Antonio greeted him. "Yo cuz, I got 4 numbers, how'd you do?" Before Ben could respond, Antonio swiveled his head away. He spotted something more interesting nearby. An attractive brunette working inside a shop. He turned back to Ben. "Please tell me you haven't gotten her number yet." Ben shook his head. Antonio smiled. "This is great. I have a stock opener for retail clerks I haven't used a while. They always call me sweetheart whenever I hit M with this. I'll lead the charge then." He sauntered over to her. When Antonio reached the clerk, he put on a solemn, bitter expression. "Hello, I'm here for my mother. She's very old now." The clerk replied with a pleasant smile, "Okay." Antonio continued. "I want to get something nice for her. Something so she knows I love her, and help me remember her when she's gone." He waited for the clerk's response. "Here's the part where she says, 'Ah, you're so sweet.'" Asterisk asterisk asterisk, the clerk replied. "Does she have an accent?" That sounded a bit off. Antonio spread a polite smile. "Could you repeat that?" "Leave, or I'm calling police." "It's nothin' much. Any good son should." His face froze in a smile, mid. Humble. Brag, he realized her response was a little unenthusiastic. She must have heard me wrong. He repeated himself, "I said I'm here to get something for my mother. We don't do that here." Antonio squinted. "What do you mean? Ain't this a shop?" "Yes. It's a taxidermist." A few minutes later, back on the bench, Ben was staring at Antonio, having heard what happened. "So in essence, you asked her to stuff your dead mother and mount her on a wall?" Antonio was frowning. "I just wanted a scarf or something who knew she had such strange hobbies." "The issue isn't her hobbies but your lack of awareness." Ben shook his head. "The line. Maybe you should have customized it more. I mean, didn't you notice all the animal heads on the walls?" Antonio snorted. "Point of a stock opener is it's supposed to do its job everywhere. How can you expect me to pay attention to those details? My mind was occupied. Didn't you see those jugs?" Antonio glanced at the SEXY store clerk's body from a distance and swallowed. "I need to find a stock opener for taxidermists." Chapter 82. Chuyuni Showdown. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 2 days to live. Sometimes a night can be so uneventful, it almost feels like it never happened. That's how Ben's night was yesterday. After the mall, he hopped the local bars solo. However, it was slow and he didn't run into good opportunities. He managed to get a couple of numbers but nothing he was optimistic about. Yet, it didn't discourage Ben because he, like the best students, focused on the future, his date with Katie today. He kept that in mind to stay optimistic, because the other hot topic in mind was his impending execution. As the timer counted down, it increased his anxiety and desperation, a fact he could only hope wouldn't interfere with his date. "It's too bad I don't have time for therapy." Of course, the bigger issue is that therapists don't exist in stories. Unless it's to get banged by Lucifer. Or dream pied by Tony Soprano. Ben spread a helpless smile. It's tough for MCs that we don't want to do crazy things, but what can you expect when no one stops to check on our mental health? At the moment, it was evening and he was walking up to the front of a book megastore near his dorm. This is it. I've arrived to the sect library to choose my first battle skill. Even from outside, dozens of rows of books and aspiring readers were visible through the glass display. This continued for several floors. Ben stepped inside, feeling the temperature upgrade from early autumn to room, as the light sounds of turning pages and mellow chatting tickled his ears. He made his way through the paper landscape until he reached the escalator, which he stepped onto. Riding it up, the scenery on the second floor revealed itself to him. Right away, he glimpsed the view he came here to see. A waterfall of waist-length pink hair mantled the back of a girl poking through a literature aisle. Ben approached her. The odds of her turning around and being an ugly old woman with similar hair can't be too high, right? Whether it's God or Satan in the writer's room tonight, they should at least have better material than that. The girl turned, exposing her left cheek to Ben, displaying a star-shaped birthmark. It reassured him. Okay, it's her, unless there's a reunion here for the Joestar family. Ben strolled towards her, watching her pick up and flip through a manga she picked up at random. Yes, this bookstore included large manga and anime sections, as well as a cafe, which is why he chose it, having remembered that Katie liked anime. Katie, Ben greeted her. She turned around, providing a new viewing angle for Ben to notice the lollipop in her mouth. Discovering Ben, she put back the Mirai Nikki manga as a cheerful smile bloomed on her face. It surprised Ben when she pulled out the lollipop, jumped in for an enthusiastic hug, and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Ben suppressed his little brother's ambitions as his hands held her narrow waist, and his chest felt her large D-cup bra.s.ts. Her thick navy blue sweater provided no barrier. Ben mused, it's like the world's best chest condom, you feel everything. Wait, I almost forgot, condoms don't exist in stories either. Unless it's a plot point. He turned pale. Damn, I should shut up unless I want that to happen. When Katie pulled back, she put the lollipop back in her mouth, bringing Ben's attention to her luscious full red lips offset by her pale skin. His eyes dilated at the sight of those large lips sucking that lollipop. Thank you Verizon for installing DSL. Then he watched her give the lollipop another suck. No, she's qualified to upgrade to broadband. Realizing he'd been staring at her for too long, Ben coughed. What flavor is that? She replied, lemon, I like the sweet ones. Ben nodded. Taste profile generating. The two started to chat as they strolled the manga aisles, learning about each other and discussing the various works around. Ben's eyebrows rose at a gradual rate as he discovered a shocking fact: she knew more about manga and anime than him. You seem to know a lot, he said. I should. She giggled. I work at a manga cafe that belongs to my fam. Ben didn't expect she would take her background to 11. Is one of your parents Japanese? Nope, Dad's just an otaku. Ben's expression became solemn. So this is the ancestor's daughter. He creased his eyebrows. I hope she isn't a secret martial arts master from an ancient family. Going by my novels, I need to be careful because they're everywhere. There's something important I gotta ask ya, Katie said out of the blue. She squared up with Ben. Before this date goes further, I need to make sure of something. Her body language became serious as she crossed her arms. Ben swallowed. I think I know where she's going with this. Should I lie and tell her I'm Jewish? Katie narrowed her eyes, so narrowed that it looked like she was sleeping. Ben held his breath. Is she a narcoleptic? Should I wake her up? The atmosphere became deadly silent. In the corner of Ben's eye, he thought he saw a tumbleweed roll by. It was the signal. Katie's eyes opened ultra-wide. Like floodgates. Like floor-to-ceiling space doors. She was for real now. It was super intimidating, guys. She asked Ben, what do you prefer? Her eyes once again became as sharp as triple-wielded samurai swords. Dubs. Or subs? Ben's mind raced to find the safe path. What's the right answer? I understand both sides of the argument. Dubs mess up the voices but subs take away from appreciating the animation. No, I'm thinking about it wrong. What would she choose? He entered contemplation. On the side, some otakus overheard the conversation. Her otaku cultivation is a much higher realm. He's hopeless. This junior ran into the wrong opponent. Pity, pity. Sigh. The heavens are jealous of the talented. Ben glanced at the disbelieving audience. I can hear you bastards. This isn't a tournament. Go away. Turning back to Katie, his eyes radiated enlightenment. Ben lowered his head. Dubs or subs is it? He placed his hand on his face, then raised his gaze to meet hers, giving her a haughty stare through the cracks of his fingers. I choose neither. Katie glared at him. What is the meaning of this? Ben returned a slow chuckle. Nice try. But the correct answer. Is manga. Silence radiated through the bookstore. The nearby otakus gasped in unison. A fat kid's glasses cracked in one lens. Katie gazed at Ben with her jaw dropped in disbelief. Yet, after a long time, she smiled. Congratulations. You're the first to pass the great otaku Sphinx's riddle. Ben wiped the sweat off his forehead. That was close. I'm lucky I remembered she works at a manga cafe. Otherwise, the result could have been horrifying, solo masturbation. After that, Katie became even more cheerful. She jumped left and right through the manga aisles, chatting Ben's ear off about her favorite mangas and opening up to him. Sometimes Ben would give a contradictory opinion, which she elevated to melodrama, pouting and debating him on the virtues of her favorite works and characters. At one point, Ben's mind drifted off while his hand was rummaging through some anime and he pulled out a DVD at random. Oh, you like that, huh? Katie asked wide-eyed. Ben looked at his hand. It was a copy of Junju Romantica. A famous yaoi anime. Ben's face turned green. Not good. He looked at Katie and released a nervous laugh. My hand slipped. I meant to grab something else. He put it back in haste, and walked a few steps away from the yaoi section, out of danger. He grabbed something in the new area. Katie raised an eyebrow. Oh, so you meant to grab Tentacle and Witches. Ben glanced at his hand. It was a cover of a half.N.K.E.D girl, whose private parts were unexposed only because they were wrapped by a green slimy tentacle monster. That's when Ben understood. He wandered into the hentai section. Realizing this could kill the date, he panicked, feeling his heart trying to break out from his chest. My only chance is to confuse her. I know. I'll use those concepts I learned in that creative writing class. With a studious expression, he turned to Katie. There's a lot of character development in this one. People also underestimate the thematic value of addressing the societal biases on human/tentacle relations. Ben's body wouldn't move, but his mind was cursing at full speed. A tentacle with character development. Human/tentacle relations. What the F***ck are they teaching me in that university? Katie scrutinized Ben for a long time. Then, she finally spoke. I guess I can see your point. I read Gintama. Ben wanted to cry. Jintoki. You're my savior. Chapter 83. Katie's story. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Target's current attraction level. Attracted, +1, target's current comfort level. Acquaintance, +1, it was a good move accusing her of liking Rachel from Tower of God. Ben was becoming experienced in the art form of teasing. He'd come a long way from accusing people of being Hitler. Meanwhile, Katie leaned against the shelf of anime, pouting. Now that the attraction's high enough, it's time to work more on comfort. Ben led Katie over to the cafe where they could sit down and talk in a more intimate setting. They arrived at an oval arrangement of black leather sofas, where 90s music was playing. The smell of coffee floated through the air. The presence of sofas was another reason Ben chose this location. Beluga told him that sofas were helpful for building comfort. Sitting side by side allowed for easier touching, and thus the building of keen comfort as a result. It was a fact that almost every man was ignorant of. If I think about it, it's hard to remember any sit-down date I've seen in movies, TV, or anywhere where the couple wasn't sitting on opposite sides of a table. Ben realized he was ahead of the game. As he scanned for the best seats, he felt a sudden extra weight on his right side. Glancing over, he discovered Katie had jumped on him, and was holding his arm tight for protection as she stared at something. Following her gaze, he saw a bearded middle-aged man leaving the cafe. Turning back to Katie, Ben couldn't help but appreciate her cute fearful expression. He liked the feeling of his arm between her comfy brie.s.ts even more. But he didn't understand what worked her up. What's the matter? Do you know him? She shook her head, then looked down. No, I thought it's embarrassing. You can tell me anything, he reassured her. Except that my story just gained a gender bender tag. Ben showed her a considerate expression, but then turned away when he remembered something important. I.N.C.E.S.T would be even worse. Because not only would few publishers accept it as a novel. But it would never be made into a movie because there's already Oldboy. And Hollywood even farted out a remake. He twisted back to Katie, encouraging her with a warm smile and a light nod to continue telling him her sensitive story, before spinning away again because he recalled an even more crucial detail. Didn't the Oldboy remake have Thanos F** King Scarlet Witch? Really, that could have been a WandaVision reality warp. Ben gasped. From that day forward, the Marvel Universe was spun on its head with novel fan theories. A few seconds later, Ben coughed. Katie, you were in the middle of telling me something that seemed very important to you. Ben didn't mean to be insensitive to Katie, but this was serious canon business he was dealing with. After some hesitation, Katie nodded and told Ben of her private matter. I have a fear that it's called pagonophobia. Ben blinked. A fear of pogo sticks. She pinched his shoulder. TCH, don't be ridiculous. Ben chuckled. I guess that would be silly. It's a fear of beards. Ben's face froze mid-chuckle. You what M8? Katie released his arm and stared at her feet as her face flushed. He sought clarity. As in Blackbeard, Bluebeard. Or Jim Carrey beard. Just, any beard. Even a 5 o'clock shadow makes me fidgety. Before making a judgment, Ben always tried to consider the positive side. At least I'll never have to worry about her cuckolding me for a wizard. Satisfied having eliminated some powerful competitors, since he was still in the middle of a date with this girl, Ben took a few seconds to process this information properly. If I really think about, it'll be tough for lots of lumberjacks and grandpas to swoop in too. Despite his analysis, Ben wasn't sure the proper way to respond to this reveal. I'm sorry for your loss. He realized that didn't sound right and tried again. I mean, that seems tough. How do you, survive? Now that the bearded middle-aged man left, Katie loosened up. It's not bad as long as I'm not right next to those critters. They just give me the nerve. Critters, does she think beards are gremlins? Katie returned to her usual self. It's one reason I like Trot Tin, around the manga and anime stuff, it's a younger crowd, a beard-free safe zone. Will I get bonus points if I tell her I manscape.no? Let's not risk it, better to change the subject. Ben brought Katie to sit down side by side with him on a sofa. They ordered some drinks and began conversing about more intimate topics. He learned that Katie used to be unattractive, or at least that's what she believed. She was flat-chested and her facial birthmark always made her self-conscious. Then she went through a growth spurt. Ben decoded this information. She evolved into her final form. One summer, I just rocketed out of my cocoon. Ben showed the smile of a thoughtful listener. LOL, C*CKOK, come on Ben, you're not 12. Then I turned into a butterfly. He patted her back in encouragement. But. Ben sipped his coffee. Now that I've met the daily juvenile quota to feed my inner demon that I should get serious. She really seems like a nice girl, I'd like to know better. They chatted as he continued doing Kino, building her comfort. Target's current comfort level. Familiar, +1. After a while, he placed his arm over the back of her seat, establishing dominance and making his intentions known. This led Katie to opening up even further. She told him how she dated someone in high school for a long time. He was also an anime fan, but he dumped her because he said she'd never be as good as 2D girls. Katie gazed at Ben with a vulnerable expression, seeking reassurance as she leaned against him, squeezing her meaty melons against his arm. But he only returned a vacant stare. Sorry baby, Otaku Bible, Kaima 16.12. Thou shalt not slander 2D goddesses. When Katie removed her fun bags from his arm and returned to her story, Ben breathed a sigh of relief in his mind. I ain't no rat. But every man has his limit of titty temptation. I lost confidence after that. 'Cause there's no way I can ever be like one of those girls. She looked down and rubbed her thighs for self-comfort. Ben thought of something. She's wrong. If I don't die tomorrow, and my biography becomes a bestseller, a webcomic adaptation wouldn't be impossible. Though, he wasn't sure if he should tell her. On second thought, I better not get her hopes up. Unless my life turns into mindless wish. Fulfillment soon, it'll be tough to sway the masses. Then, he envisioned a potential win-win situation. While remembering his plan for his next move to get Katie to his dorm room, he glanced at her large brie A.S.Ts and full lips. Katie, this needs to be a team effort. I can't do fan service by myself, so our 2D future is all up to you now. Chapter 84. Pinkhead in bed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ben thought, I'm approaching the final quarter. Stay focused. Clear eyes. Full hearts. Target's current comfort level. Close, +1. They talked for a long while before he felt it was appropriate for them to leave and walk to his dorm, which they were now doing. The night air was warm tonight, and Katie's energetic voice overpowered the noise of passing traffic. I can't believe you actually have the first printed volume of Lupin. Not even my dad has that. Can't wait to reads. Katie said with an enthusiastic smile. Ben did have that manga. He won it in a contest from an otaku site long ago and considered it one of his treasures. This was a perk of having things in common with your date. As they walked, Ben kept up the conversation, but he was thinking about something else. Beluga informed him he'd been making a mistake in his prior dates. It was a simple one, he hadn't kissed his dates before bringing them to his place. Beluga told him that getting a kiss before going somewhere private reduced the chance of the girl backing out later. Even though Katie agreed to come, Ben wanted to play it safe. He would have preferred to kiss her earlier in the manga cafe, but there were too many people around and it was too bright. That would have made it uncomfortable for her. Next time, I'll pick a more secluded cafe with softer lighting. Even though it would be more abrupt now, Ben still gathered his courage and made his play. He stopped walking. Katie. Heh. Katie turned to Ben. Ben stared into her eyes. It's up to the man to be aggressive and take what he wants. He grabbed her by the waist and brought her towards himself. Feeling her cushy bosom against his chest. Katie's face became crimson, but she didn't move away. Her body became softer, expressing her willingness as she glanced down at his lips. Ben went for it. A second later, his tongue tasted sweet lemon and his lips met the softest partners they'd ever known. Katie's full lips not only looked good, but felt good when kissing. Ben sucked on each of them one at a time, savoring their juicy plumpness. HMNN. With her eyes closed, Katie got into the kiss as well. It was her first romantic moment in a long time. Honk honk, he drew back from Katie and peered around with urgency. Have we been ice-guyed into clown world? Get out of the way. A man yelled from his driver's side window. Ben realized his mind fixated too much on the kiss, which led to him doing it in the middle of a street crossing. Despite that, he wasn't sure of the correct answer to his previous question. So, he focused on the date. He chose the wrong setting for the kiss, but Ben knew what to do in this situation. His parents were fans of politics and he spent a lot of time watching both Hillary and Trump during the 2016 election. From these two mouthmeisters, Ben picked up some useful concepts. He looked at Katie. Your juicy lips almost got us killed. See, this is why you need a man like me around to watch out for you. Blame the other party. Never accept responsibility. That's what being a politician was about, and Ben served the interests of the populace. The people want me to go fracking. He grabbed her hand and pulled her along towards their destination. Katie wasn't sure how to respond. She felt wronged but also amused, so she just giggled. Zoe. Here it is, Lupin 3, Volume 1. Ben showed Katie his treasure as the two sat on his bed. While her eyes concentrated on the manga, his eyes concentrated on her legs. She had taken her shoes off, exposing her bare legs in their entirety. Ben's eyes traced up her small cute feet, to her lean calves, and finally her pale smooth thighs. The sight of them mesmerized him. But he remembered something more important and looked back at her. Don't crease it. He returned to admiring her legs. Katie's super cute, but that volume is rare, and last I checked, P*SSY isn't out of print. Ben would stand by some otaku principles, even if it meant death. After she finished browsing through the manga, Ben took it from her and put it back in a safe area of his desk. He wouldn't make the same silly mistake he did with Annabelle and leave it laying around. He played some K-pop on his phone, which he knew she liked. Of course, he told her he loved it even more. Then he sat back down next to her, and posted his arm behind her back. Katie was now looking down, shy, much quieter than her usual cheery self. She liked Ben a lot, maybe too much, and she wasn't sure what to do. Guys approached her sometimes, but no one who had so much in common with her and knew how to make her both laugh and feel excited. With Ben, she was comfortable, attracted, and safe. Because he didn't have any facial hair. Rather than talk, Ben spoke with actions. He cupped her chin with his palm and nudged her head towards him, which she went along with, though her face became redder. Her thick lips seemed to become even more voluptuous as blood rushed towards them. When he saw her lick them, he couldn't hold back anymore. Ben needed to taste them again, and so he did. His warm mouth compressed hers, and Katie melted. Putting her arm around his back, layering it on top of his arm that wrapped around her, like a clasp fastening a lock. Target's current arousal level. Stimulated, +1, Ben brushed his lips along hers, giving her goosebumps. Then, he mapped her lips with his tongue, tracing all around them, sucking on one, then the other. Each with their own charm. To Ben, her lips were as soft as clouds, and he was ready to make it rain. And Katie released a light M.O.N as Ben peppered kisses from the edge of her mouth. Along her cheeks. And then on her earlobe, which he sucked and nibbled. Her breath became heavy. Target's current arousal level. Horny, +1, Ben pulled her back onto his bed until they both were laying down next to one another. Then, his free hand slid up her leg. Feeling like he was gliding up silk, he moved from her delicate lower calf. Up to her knee. And then her milky thigh. He continued along the top of her skirt. And over her sweater to her stomach, where he brushed over her navel piercing, but that was only a layover on this cruise. While giving her a deep kiss, Ben's travel-weary hand arrived at its first destination, Katie's large brie A.S.Ts. He squeezed one over the top of her sweater. Then the other. Hugh, she M.O.A. Ned between kisses as her body heated like a furnace. Yet, for Ben, This trip was only a test run, a free cruise for listening to a sales pitch for a time. Share. One where he brought his mistress. Because it was private and she had been too uppity lately to deserve a trip to Hawaii. His hand moved back down, passing her belly, until it reached the edge of her navy blue sweater, and looped under it. Then, it started its real journey upwards. Until it arrived at a soft cotton bra. The fabric of our wives. Ben grabbed on and squeezed even harder than before. Katie gazed into his eyes and bit her lower lip, craving more. Squeeze them more, she thought, but couldn't say. But Ben read her mind. He pulled up her sweater, exposing her white lean stomach, and after a little more, her ample brie. S.Ts. Ben freed his other hand from under her neck, leaned upwards, and gazed at her. Katie just laid there with her tits right in front of him, waiting for him to do as he wanted. Although she didn't object, her modesty compelled her to cover part of them with one arm. Which made her look even more enticing. As for Ben, with the prime rib already in front of him, he was never one to pass up an open buffet. That sneeze guard can't stop me. He dug in. Chapter 85. Sherlock and his pipe, are point 18. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Author's note. This is a 2-parter. This chapter has some comedy, the next one will be straight R. Point 18. Oh, with Blackpink's Kill This Love playing in the background, KDM.O.A.net as Ben squeezed both of her brie. S.Ts. Her body was becoming chaotic, like the gathering of clouds preceding an imminent storm. Ben kneaded her brie. S.Ts. like dough, enjoying their softness and bounciness, but this bra was getting in the way of his dreams. With one swift motion, he pulled it up over her tits, exposing the full feast to his eyes. And with ravenous hunger, Ben's face buried itself into them. Ben sucked on Katie's hard end. I.P.P.L.es. Squeezing both brie. S.Ts. together in front of him as he alternated. Target's current arousal level. L.U.S. Fool, +1, with Katie's end. I.P.P.L.E. between his teeth, Ben glanced up at her, noticing the sheen of sweat glistening on her forehead, which only made her a sincere. Ben's little brother stood up to get a better view of the show. As the Squirtle spirit in his fingers also became restless. Tits weren't enough anymore. Tits wouldn't pay the bills. Nor could they buy him a new head. Ben summoned Squirtle as his hand edged down Katie's belly, which was becoming slick with sweat. Arriving over her skirt, he reached the top of her underwear, and pressed down. Her underwear is extra thick. Katie was losing herself in the moment, and knew she needed to say something before it was too late. Wait. Ben glanced up at her. Between pants, she managed to release her words. I'm on my period. Ben froze as the words echoed in his mind. And he understood something. So that was a pad I felt. Shirk.O.C.K put the clues together. But it didn't bring him any closer to stopping the killer. If the old him ran into a stumbling block like this, he would have thought, that's it man, game over, man. It's game over. But the current him was different. Beluga mentioned to him that this happened sometimes, so Ben wasn't too shocked. He already generated some preliminary ideas for how to cope. No pun necessary. What would Benedict C. U. Mberbatch do? Strategy A. He comforted her. It's okay, I don't mind gore. As long as it serves the plot. Have you seen Hostel? Katie shook her head, not about the movie recommendation. She'd seen it. It sucked. She shook her head to Ben's implication, and he understood her thoughts. She's self-conscious about the blood. Strategy B. He lightened the mood using parody that wouldn't tread over copyright laws. I'm a soft-serve vampire who twinkles in the sunlight. Still, Katie wouldn't budge. I'm sorry that I don't like it, that I just don't wanna. Ben squinted. She's team werewolf. A bit ironic given her phobia. Target's current arousal level. Horny, point 1, Ben tried to keep his cool. This was a setback, a major setback, but he knew he couldn't push anymore. Her dropping arousal level made that clear. Sorry Squirtle, looks like you must stay in your hole and rub the lotion on your shell. Thinking of moves for a moment, Ben remembered a sales move he learned when he was studying motivational speaking. It was called the door in the face technique. If you made a large request to someone, and they denied you, it would increase the following chance of them agreeing to a smaller request. Ben's eyes gleamed as an idea came to him. Strategy C. Ben nodded. Okay, I understand. You're on your period. That's cool that we won't have sex. Although it pained Ben, he knew he had no way, and by taking sex off the table, it would help Katie relax. He was right. The tension left her expression and he shifted himself up to resume making out with her. He was resetting a bit. A short while later, he returned to squeezing and sucking on her brie A.S.Ts. MNNN, targets current arousal level. L.U.S.Tfool, +1, it's hot. You should take this off. Ben helped Katie remove her sweater and bra, her upper body now bare, leaving only her black skirt below. Then, they went back at it. As Ben kissed and fondled her, he remembered a tip. It was something Beluga told him. There were two things necessary for CX, AD.I.C.K and a PUSSY. When considering foreplay, another way to put it was there were two roads to the same destination. Physical escalation required traveling up at least one of those roads to arrive at sex. So if one road closed, you only had to travel the other. As the embers reignited the bonfire in Katie's body, Ben gently took her hand and placed it on his stomach. Then, as he sucked on her tit, he guided her hand down, while locking eyes with her, making sure she wasn't uncomfortable. Her palm slid down until it sat on the top of his hard cock. She's on her period. But I'm not. It was the road less traveled. Katie paused a moment in surprise, but then went with it, and Ben didn't have to do anything more. He refocused on her brie A.S.Ts as she rubbed his D.I.C.K over his jeans. Then, when she appeared fully comfortable, he gave her a passionate kiss. At that moment, with one hand, he pulled down his zipper, and took out his manhood which burst out of his pants smacking into Katie's palm. Her eyes widened and her face turned beet red in embarrassment. But the feeling she felt most was shock. Her mouth hung open. Oh my God, she said, as she wrapped her fist around the base of Ben's cock, it's so big. Ben smirked. She's gaping at it in more ways than one. To be specific, 2 ways. She leaned upwards while holding it to get a better look. As the seconds passed, she started to stroke it. Up and down. It needs some lube. Ben said. Huh? Katie asked. Spit in your hand. Ben leaned back. After blinking a few times, Katie did as instructed. Then, she returned to jerking Ben off. Her jugs hung out in the air as she sat up, getting closer to Ben's D.I. C.K so she could see it better. I can't believe this thing is so big, she chuckled. She put her arm next to it to compare. It's almost as thick as my arm. Her arm was skinny and it was a bit of an exaggeration, but it still made Ben feel like a young hero. Inside, his pride swelled. I went from thick boy to thick, boy 3I. Yet outside, he maintained a righteous expression. I'm the kind of guy that if a heroine gives me an inch I give her back 7. As Katie continued to play with Ben's C.O.C.K, he decided it was time to go to the next step. Here, let me make you more comfortable so you can get a better look. Ben took off his jeans, then laid on the long side of the bed so Katie could grab a spot between his legs, in the VIP. Katie hesitated a moment, but relaxed when she remembered that Ben said he wouldn't pressure her for sex. In that case, she didn't mind having a bit of fun. She moved over to sit between his legs, once again grabbing hold of his throbbing boner. And smiling as she observed and stroked it. Ben put his hands behind his head. Everything was going as planned. It was his modified version of the aforementioned sales move. The D.I.C.K in the face technique. Chapter 86. Testicular Negotiations, R. 18, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Segoyai. As Ben stared at her large brie A.S.Ts, he shrugged. Why not? She brought her head closer to get a better view. Observing it from different angles. Feeling something was missing, she added more spit to her palm and returned to playing with it. A few seconds later though, Katie realized she wasn't comfortable sitting up. So she shifted back to create some space, and laid down flat on her stomach, posting on her elbows with her head near Ben's cock. She smiled as she resumed observing and massaging it. Fuck. His D.I.C.K pulsated watching those cute mannerisms of hers. It made her giggle. Gathering courage, Ben took the next step. Why don't you put it in your mouth? Yet, Katie wanted to play by her own rules. I don't want to go too fast. That I'm a good girl. Ben replied, good girls finish last. But she still refused. She missed the double entendre. Then just give it a kiss. She still shook her head. Ben knew he needed to think outside the C.O.C.Ks. Then how about just kissing my ball hearts? Katie raised an eyebrow. Ball hearts. He nodded. They store love inside. After some internal deliberation, Katie was willing to play ball. Ben released a sigh of relief in his mind. It's good she didn't reject that too. Thank God for the rule of three. Katie kept one palm wrapped around Ben's erection as she scooted down, bringing her head lower. Then, she used her free hand to brush her pink hair to one side. Ben sat up on his elbows to get a better view. He could see Katie's cute face only inches from his D.I.C.K. and under her, those big tits squished against the bed, becoming even larger. But there was more. Her black skirt was hiked up, displaying her tight ass in her panties. Pink with white stripes. Beyond that, Katie's bare white legs hung in the air, making gentle swings back and forth, showing her cute little feet as the background while she tugged Ben's cock. He gulped at this enticing scene. Katie moved her head forward. Ben could see the hesitation in her eyes, but her hot breath on his boner overwhelmed his attention. With some indecisive movements, Katie puckered her thick lips. And brought them to Ben's balls, giving them a peck. All while stroking his cock. Ben released a slow exhale, enjoying the sensation. Then, Katie pulled back, reviewing how it felt. Finding it not bad, she went back in for another kiss. While giving him little kisses, Katie kept jerking him off. After some time, realizing one hand wasn't enough, she added another. Now massaging his C.O.C.K with both hands. Ben's breathing became heavier. Noticing him enjoying himself, Katie smiled and relaxed. She liked pleasuring him. Since that's the case, she decided to go a bit further, sticking out her little pink tongue. And giving them a lick. Ben's C.O.C.K throbbed when he saw and felt her warm, wet tongue. This is hot as F.U.C.K. I've got this, good girl, licking my balls. Katie continued jerking him up and down. Increasing the frequency of her licks over time. After a few minutes, she tried something else. Katie leaned in. And swallowed one of Ben's nuts into her mouth. Sucking it. Yes. Ben leaned back, loving the heat, moisture, and suction of Katie's young mouth on his ballsack. Pulling back, she whispered, feels good. Yeah babe. It felt damn good. She smiled, continuing to massage Ben's D.I.C.K with her hands and his balls with her mouth. As time passed, she even tried putting both of his balls in her mouth. Sucking until she covered them in saliva. Her feet wiggled in rhythm to the background music as she stroked, licked, and sucked, smiling while giving Ben occasional eye contact. Ben C.O.C.K throbbed harder and harder in her grip. It's like sucking a lolly. She giggled. At that mention, Ben saw a path to victory. Since you're already licking there, why don't you lick upwards a bit? Katie narrowed her eyes, but didn't slow the up and down motion of her hands. After considering it a few seconds, she conceded. Fine. But just this, Kay. No more. Humph. She put on a stern pouty expression. You strike a hard bargain. But we've got a deal. Ben leaned back and enjoyed the show. Katie continued tugging him off. Licking and sucking his balls. Then, she climbed her way up with little kisses. To the base of his shaft. Removing her bottom hand to create space. Now, he could see her thick lips kissing it. And they felt amazing. Soft and sexy. Damn. Soon, her small pink tongue emerged. And started to lick the sensitive back of Ben's cock. Ben was even more sensitive there. As her soft tongue massaged his D.I.C.K. it throbbed harder against her mouth. Her tongue made its way up. At a very slow pace. But Ben didn't mind because it only helped him focus on the sensation. Then, she moved her head back down. And licked up again. Down. And up again. Ben started panting. This was too damn sexy. Soon, she wasn't even stroking anymore, only giving it a firm squeeze at the base. Because she needed the room. She was lapping her tongue up and down the back of Ben's C.O.C.K. even reversing it at the top so the rear of her tongue brushed it on the way down. Ben's D.I.C.K. pulsated. Becoming more and more aroused. Then, Katie changed it up. With a playful smile, she stared at his D.I.C.K. and started licking the spot right under the head. Changing from up and down motions. To left and right. It was driving him insane. Getting him closer and closer. Then, she tilted her head perpendicular, and pursed her thick lips as she kissed it. Like it was her treasure. But there was more. She rotated her neck, moving those sexy lips up and down along the back of Ben's C.O.C.K. Stroking it with them. Soon, the throbbing of Ben's D.I.C.K. became uncontrollable. He couldn't take it anymore. Fuck. Heh. With her lips still pursed against his C.O.C.K., Katie stopped her motions and glanced at him. That's when it hit her. A stream of C.U.M. shot out from Ben's D.I.C.K. spraying her right across her cheek and hair. Surprised, she moved her head back, but it wasn't over. The next shot hit her right in the face. Her eyes opened wide, but before she could respond, there was another. Her mouth hung open in shock. That's when a shot of C.U.M. flew right into it. A sticky line now hung down her lips and chin. But it wasn't the end. Another shot. And another. Covering her. Drenching her face. Ben couldn't stop. They both lost count before he finished. In the end, he gasped for breath. While Katie panted with mixed emotions. He had cloaked her entire face in white. Her open mouth also collected a good amount of sperm. Realizing this, she did her best to spit it out. Making it drip down her chin. Abd trickle down her big tits. With some drops even landing on her pale thighs. Katie didn't expect so much C.U.M. and it made her embarrassed now. She wasn't experienced at this, only trying some things she saw on the internet. Ben watched all this with mixed emotions himself. There was guilt. And also pride. A lot more pride really. I sure did jizz a lot. Last time with Leah, Ben also released a lot but hadn't noticed because most of it landed on the ground. Now, with a proper canvas he understood the depths of his artistic talent. Is this a side effect of the cultivation pill? He was certain he didn't have this Tao technique before. Assuming his guess was correct, he put that aside and looked at Katie. There was so much C.U.M. on her face that one eye remained closed. Sitting on her knees, with her hands on her thighs, she pouted, gazing at Ben with an adorable expression of blame. She's still cute even as a cyclops. As the hero who slew the one-eyed devil that he decided to accept responsibility. How do I make her feel better? Ben felt bad but wasn't sure how to comfort a girl in this situation. So he tried raising her confidence. Don't worry that this is a good look for you. She didn't appreciate the compliment that in that case, I'll try to see what she needs. He put his hand on her shoulder. Do you need a towel or are you good? Chapter 87. The whole points of the nut. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Even after cleaning up, Katie was self-conscious about her surprise facial. You bearded me. Ben tried to justify it. The best way to cure a phobia is to face your fears. Then, Ben frowned when he realized something, but his expression soon eased. Nope, definitely not enough for a gender bender or yaoi tag. So don't even think about it. Let's keep the marketing focused. My biography doesn't need to cater to everyone. Katie was still moping. You made me look like Gandalf the White. Ben tried to make her feel better. It could have been worse. If you looked like Gandalf the Grey, I'd have to check my diet. Instead of finding it amusing, Katie sulked further. Seeing that failed, Ben tried reason. It was unintentional, believe me. How was I supposed to know that you'd fall off a cliff with a Balrog? Have a skydiving battle ignoring the laws of psychics. Change your class to magic swordsman. Then fall through a plot crater and land in a lake of ass. Pull. Water. Katie was about to speak, but Ben put his finger on her lips. I know what you want to say, that there's a wider universe down there unexplored in the novels because Tolkien died first. But come on. At some point you have to wonder. Is it not I, the audience, who's the real victim here? That's why it's not my fault. I'm going home. Katie said. I'll still be expecting you to ride in last second to save the day at Helm's Deep. Just try not to have your army hide behind that hill too long for your dramatic entrance. Lest we all die. Noticing Katie was still pouting, Ben gave it one last try to cheer her up. Maybe fantasy isn't her cup of tea. She might be more of a sci-fi gal. He laced his fingers in front of himself. Katie, look, I'm a man of science. There's a principle in quantum physics, that particles exist as both waves and particles at the same time, which explains what happened to the electrons in my s. It's called wave-particle spewality. So you see, you were going to get splashed or splotted no matter what. Your mistake was looking at it and making it real. When Katie started slapping his arm, Ben wondered if she was a creationist. After talking her down though, they made up. Despite joking around, Ben checked multiple times that she was okay after. He even walked her home, despite every minute being precious to him now, which showed his magnanimity. It's good she lives 2 blocks away, he thought as they traveled. Ben was back in his dorm room, having dropped off Katie, and now sitting on his bed as he opened his system screen. With time running out, the first thing he checked when he returned was his death mission. Was it enough? When he saw it, Ben unleashed an exhausted sigh. There was no change. So what does it mean by seduce? He tried to get clarification, but the system wouldn't explain any further. He only knew he needed to do more. If it requires oral or regular sex, I have a chance. But if this ends up being another parable for true love, I'm going to King die because the sheeple want a Hollywood ending. Ben rubbed his temples as he pondered the notion that his execution might result from the same forces that generated Julia Roberts' rom.coms. He groaned in frustration. Does every romance movie need to have a tall, rich, successful guy falling in love with a 6? With such absurd expectations, no wonder it's so hard for me to close a 7. I mean, I know they're catering to the fantasies of the median moonhog audience. But what kind of basic turd can only enjoy mindless wish fulfillment? Then, he grimaced, because he remembered his web novel reading list. Sigh, fine, it is what it jizz. Speaking of which, let's check what achievements I earned. Ben opened his system notifications. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. Picking your brain, uncommon. Have a woman kiss your testicles, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, I've got lots of ideas. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. Courtesy lick, uncommon. Have a woman lick your p.e.n.i.s without intentions of proper courtship with it, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, my penile reputation is always at stake. Yet, despite her questionable intentions, good manners are always appreciated. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. Ball job, repeatable, uncommon. Get a ball job from a new woman to completion, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, ball job, never heard of that. I guess this makes me an innovator of sorts. A few seconds later though, he frowned, because after that, he didn't see an oral sex achievement. To be certain, he went to check his weekly challenge, and as he suspected, it was still uncompleted. Weekly challenge. Smile like a donut. Receive oral sex. Not from yourself. And from a woman. After scratching his head. And throwing a few things, Ben could only accept it. I have to assume it didn't count it because there was an insertion. Well, nothing I can do about it. Let's see what else I got. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. C** stage negotiator, uncommon. Negotiate with a woman to receive a repeatable achievement, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, Ben nodded. Mark Cuban for the assist. This is why people watched Shark Tank. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. Athenian war paint, uncommon. Give a woman a s.p.e.r.m facial while she's awake, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, jizz. Athens. Ben almost fell over from front. Kicking empty air. But that also somehow fit the theme. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. Self-inflicted c.u.m shot, uncommon. Be ejaculated by a woman who hasn't received the proper training in handling p.e.n.i.ses. Resulting in self.casualty, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, Ben snorted. More leftist liberal hogwash. Anyone with foresight or foreskin knows the statistics show the truth. C.U.M don't spill on people. People spill on people. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. Edward Newgate, fine. Give a woman a white beard of s.p.e.r.m, distributing reward. PUA points plus 500, Ben smiled. This one gave the most points. Only proving once again why Whitebeard was the strongest. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. DNA eye patch, uncommon. Give a woman an eye patch of s.p.e.r.m, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, Ben shrugged. You don't really need depth vision at such long distance. Congratulations. You've unlocked the achievement. Dropping off the kids, uncommon. Ejaculate into a woman's mouth, distributing reward. PUA points plus 200, unfortunately for those kids, Katie the kidnapper has already taken them to a secondary location. Ben glanced at his garbage bin where many tissues were stuffed. Good luck in your next lives. I'm sorry I wasn't a better father. Finished going over his spoils, Ben took a minute to sit in silence on his bed. He knew that to an outside observer his comedic mood might have seemed inappropriate given his circumstances of impending death. Yet, a sense of humor was the only thing stabilizing his mind. The guillotine was approaching his neck and he could almost see his reflection in it. If he didn't lighten the situation, he would have already gone insane. Ben exhaled and moved to the next step. With all the achievements, he now had 2,450 points. It wasn't enough for a high-level mystery box, but 2 mid-level ones still had some chance of giving him something useful. With time running out, he couldn't risk trying to save up 5,000. He needed to take his chances now. So, without procrastinating, Ben took out a Lucky Clove cigarette, and prepared to take what could be the last gamble of his life. Chapter 88. Prizes, Progress, and Platinum Hits. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A light blue mid-level mystery box appeared in Ben's hands. With a Lucky Clove emitting green smoke in his mouth, he made his draw. A few seconds later, a small rolled off white scroll appeared in his lap. Sonya Blade Leg Grab, Skill Scroll, Consumable, Uncommon, X1. Can use once on a chosen target to automatically perform the move, a fighting skill. The move sounded familiar to Ben, but he couldn't recall from where. It was also the first skill scroll consumable he'd seen. Still, this wouldn't help him now, so he put it in his pocket and bought another mystery box before his clove went out. Receiving another box in his hands, Ben didn't hesitate and took his chances again. Soon after, he was holding a modern elegant black leather belt with a steel buckle. He traced his fingers along it, feeling its luxurious texture. High-class leather belt, item, uncommon, X1. Increases wearer's social status by 1 up to a maximum of 6, it wasn't bad, but he doubted it would change his situation much now, since his social status would be too low even with that. Still, even a mosquito was meat. If you ignored the human blood in its stomach and risk of catching disease. Ben wore the belt and checked his current stats. This might be the last occasion when he looked at them, so he turned on a system option to show a comparison of what he started with a month ago to what he had now. Looks. 2-6. From monster to mediocre, S.E.Zist double standards. If I was a woman, I'd be in AROM.com getting McConaughey'd. Charisma. 0-7. From trash to middling TikTok personality. Ben smiled. Sounds good to me. TikTok's blowing up. I don't care if they steal all my data. Social status. 2-3, 2+1. From janitor.to janitor with nice belt, he shrugged. The magical clothes make the man. Seduction skills. 0-4. From hand to heifer, come on. That's not even accurate. Ben suspected the system was like a bitter friend who always overrated his girlfriends and underrated those of others. Knowledge. 4-5. From student to student who read a book, valid. Manliness. 1-5, 4+1. From hairless baby to hairy boy, he nodded with pride. It's ac.u.m.m.i.n.g of age story. Communication. 3-5. From mumbler to memmer, this is fine. Personal talent. 2-2. From trash to trash, one day, I'll make you call me a treasure. PUA points. 450 equipped title. C** puncher. Although he was lacking in many places, overall, Ben realized he'd made significant progress over this last month. He changed from a complete waste to someone with a rosy future. Or that would have been the case, if his future didn't have a deadline tomorrow. Looking at the data, Ben knew he'd done all he could during this time. I'm just not sure if it'll be enough. Shaking off his doubt and anxiety, Ben took a deep breath and centered himself. He still had an opportunity tonight, and tomorrow as well. The past few days, he'd been texting the girls he dated and also the new numbers he got, but the results weren't too pleasing. All the new girls whose phone numbers he obtained wouldn't date him by tomorrow. Ben suspected the time limit was making him anxious, and it was coming through in his conversations, making the leads hesitant to meet him. Even following the 3-minute rule, it didn't protect him from using language and tone that broke the girls' thirstometers. But he knew there wasn't much he could do about it. A man walking the plank would find it tough to have a wank. As for the girls he dated, Annabelle wasn't available and Katie would still be on her period. As for Leah, she didn't respond at all since their hookup. Ben wasn't sure what was going on with her. The only exception was Miyuki. She agreed to hang out with Ben tomorrow, and even better, they planned to watch a movie in Ben's dorm room, which would be an amazing chance for him. The only problem was that with the timing of Miyuki's job, she could only make it later at night. It would be cutting it close to the end of Ben's remaining time. That meant if it didn't work out, she might have to watch the system force him to commit seppuku with a butter knife. Or kamikaze into moped.kun for self-propelled isekai. Or any number of culturally insensitive Japanese endings. I only hope she doesn't have me die by slow fusion with metal. By this point, Ben knew the system like a jaded ex-girlfriend. She wouldn't pass up a chance for ironic humiliation. In spite of everything, he tried to look at the bright side. I suppose it would still be a less abrupt ending than most of the web novels I've read. It was risky, but the date with Miyuki was his best opportunity, one he needed to seize, and it was the same case for the remainder of tonight. Walking outside, Ben tried to pump himself up for going out later. He thought about Katie's pretty face and what he did with her, which improved his mood, and even gave him sudden inspiration for a song. When you try your best but she don't suck. Seed. When you get what you want but not what you need. When you just nut but you still can't sleep. Harems diverse. When the jizz comes streaming down her face. 'Cause you shot your load at a high speed pace. When she didn't swallow. What a waste. What could be worse? It was Ben's cover of Coldplay's Fix You. Nothing like some whole play. Ben's composition satisfied him. On a basketball court he was passing by, a group of middle school students stopped their game, and were all now staring at Ben. He thinned his eyes at them. What do they want? This better not be a Children of the Corn incident. Then, one stood up. And raised his hands. Clap. Clap soon, the others followed. Clap, 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 a standing ovation. It spread through the basketball court like a pandemic that shut down the world. So what if the quality of Ben's song was like an epidemic with identical mortality stats to the flu? Making it big in the music industry was 99% marketing and media. If Bill Gates prepared a record label in advance, this song could become a worldwide hit. Ben's eyes teared up. Even if my existence wasn't worthless, like Steve Jobs, I brought joy to people. Also off the backs of tired, sweating children. As Ben hiked to get some food before going out, his footsteps stopped when he felt something moist on the top of his nose. He touched it and found water. Then, a loud rumbling echoed in the sky. Ben gazed upwards, and saw a mass of thunderclouds obscuring the moon. His heart grew heavy with a terrible premonition. Then, his eyes blazed with fury, and he yelled to the sky. Don't you do it, Halle Berry. It's too bad for Ben that she wasn't good at taking advice. Otherwise, how do you explain Catwoman? Chapter 89. It's Raining Frats and Dogs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 89. It's Raining Frats and Dogs. Ben stood under a restaurant canopy, watching heavy rain blasting down onto the city, his frown even harsher than the weather. Even all the hot sauce he poured on the chicken kebab he just ate couldn't wash away the bad taste in his mouth. What the hell? There was nothing on the news about this. Ben knew what this would mean for his evening. Rain this early was a nightlife killer, making people stay home, which would close his window of opportunity. Is this karmic revenge for Katie? Damn cloud jizz. Now Ben would have to trudge through the rain to return to his dorm in order to get his umbrella and change his wet clothes. The worst part was there wasn't anything he could do. Despite the pessimistic circumstances, he didn't have a choice but to go out and try his luck at bars. It didn't matter that his chances were terrible because Zeus was dropping loads. Thinking about it further, Ben became angry, but he had no way to get his revenge on the culprit, Storm. Because he didn't have Halle Berry's address. So he could only curse at her mouthpiece. He pointed at the sky and screamed, "God damn you, weatherman. I curse you. Get out my shop, you crazy." A Middle Eastern man with an apron yelled at Ben from behind a counter. Ben ignored it. He was attempting to come up with ideas to salvage the night, but was shooting blanks. With no better alternative, he trekked through the rainfall, starting his journey to search for women at the local bars. On the other side of town, an obese weatherman was in an upper-class restaurant dining on a steak dinner. It was a well-deserved reward for his recent hard work. Classical music produced the perfect ambience to complement the succulent tenderloin rolling around his mouth. Then, out of nowhere, he sneezed. His male friend across the table watched a random anime 20 years ago. So he knew what this meant, and chuckled. "Someone must be talking about you." The friend blinked at the lack of response. "Rick." Suddenly, the weatherman shot up from his chair and grabbed his own throat with both hands. His mouth opened as if he was trying to scream, but only a twisted gurgle escaped. "Eck. Atch." The weatherman's face turned purple. He was choking to death. Everyone nearby gasped in shock. Noon responded except a quick-thinking waiter who ran up and gave him the Heimlich. A piece of meat flew out of the weatherman's mouth, saving his life. He almost died to the Japanese sneezing curse. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the weatherman included, who held his chest to calm down. He looked at his friend across the table. "Dear God, I almost died. Scott, did you see that?" Scott didn't answer, because he was standing up holding his throat. Eck. Atch. The piece of steak had flown from the weatherman and into his friend's gasping mouth. His face turned purple. He was choking to death. Luckily, the waiter was already experienced. He saved the day once again. Scott almost died to the Heimlich food. Spitting curse. It was fortunate there wasn't a third choking incident, but the conditions weren't right. Noon gasped in shock this time because they'd seen the weatherman choking already. And they were tired of this trope. A few hours later. Ben was standing in the street outside his dorm with rain falling down his face. Alone. He went out and tried his best, but it was a total failure. It was a weeknight, so it wasn't going to be booming in the first place, but once it started pouring, that was the night's death knell. Everyone stayed in or went home early. Ben jumped from bar to bar, but they were either empty, closed, or lacked decent prospects. One notable thing about the evening was even though the attractive girls stayed home, it hadn't stopped a decent amount of thirsty guys from trying their luck. This created additional negative factors. It worsened Ben's odds by producing an awful male-to-female ratio, and created a gross atmosphere for the women. A desperate guy even opened a bartender with the line, "Out of all the animals in the world, which one's ass would you eat?" On an interesting note, that guy was Ben. It was him trying his daily divine line on her. With what happened the last time he used the skill, Ben thought it might be better to choose an unconventional option. It's too bad the bartender didn't react as expected. Her response was trying to force him to leave his tip. And this isn't referring to money. After dodging a knife, Ben returned to his dormitory and creeped the halls. But everyone stayed inside their rooms. Midterms were coming up and people were busy studying. So now, Ben was outside, under the rain, cursing his misfortune. Why'd he do something so cliché? Because he read that web publishers said clichés were good. And were even throwing contests to reward them. Also, he hoped a spectating sponsor would take pity on him during these thirst games. Then, maybe a parachute would come down with a love potion to help him. What this sponsor would get out of it? The altruistic satisfaction of being a plot device. Exhausted, Ben trudged his way through street puddles to the edge of the park. His hazy eyes gazed at something nearby, what some would call a potential target. A trace of madness emerged in his eyes that he couldn't take it anymore. He ran forward and hugged the target with all his might. Compelled by circumstances, Ben was turning heel. Why should he care anymore? R.P.E was a popular tag in web publishing. And if it went by the formula, the target would soon fall in love with him anyway. As if proving the novels were realistic after all, the target didn't scream or resist at all. Because it was a tree. With a crazed expression, Ben released loud mocking laughter into the night air. Damn system. Even if you kill me, I wanted to prove you wrong. When you first arrived, you said a tree might reject me. Well, you were wrong. Look at Daddy now. The system remained silent, which only angered Ben further. What do you have to say, huh? This is how far I've come. Can you see my character development now? Witness me. Ruthless to the enemy and ruthless to himself. Ben became a literal tree-hugger. In order to deliver a double face slap. KO. To the system, and himself. With death approaching, Ben was losing his mind. And despite the tree accepting him, he still felt hollow. Chapter 90. Last Day on Earth. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. One Day to Live. December 1st, 1712.00.3211.59.59. It was Ben's last morning on Earth and he got to spend it watching a timer countdown. Yeah, that's so nice, she added, a large countdown in big bright numbers on every screen. How thoughtful. He shook his head. It was a hard day for him. Up to this point, he'd done all he could to clear his mission. Now, with so few hours left, there was no point struggling every second to open new girls in the middle of the day. With the experience he's gained, he knew it wouldn't get him anywhere. In fact, it would just tire him before his date with Miyuki. Ben knew pickup exhaustion was real, so he did the next best thing. He decided to use the day to settle his affairs, making peace with the possibility, the likelihood, that he'd really die. Arf arf, a dog barked, snapping Ben out of his thoughts. He wasn't in his dorm room now, but in a dog shelter. Believing it was the right thing to do, he was here to donate the remainder of his money. All of it. He glanced at the dog sitting on the examination table, a brown curly-haired mixed breed with lonely eyes. It was the type of mutt no one would adopt. It's been a while since I've patted a dog. Ben sighed. If I did this earlier, maybe the system wouldn't be killing me off for unpopularity. Bringing in a new Doctor Who. Walking over to the pooch, Ben considered the possibilities. If one guy killed you, I could even go John Wick on the world, start a murder spree. Killing dozens of humans with my gun. Foo. But people wouldn't bat an eye. I might even get an unbreakable plot body. Petting the dog on its head, he brushed its springy hair. But you're too cute to use as a morality shield. I like your natural perm, by the way. Game knows game. Arf. Ben spread a helpless smile. You're just like me, huh boy. He cut himself off because he realized something. He leaned over and checked the dog for penile presence. Nodding, he continued. There's a real gender stereotype in fiction. When a new dog enters the scene, characters assume it's male. Even though the dog. Barber hasn't given you any androgynous features to clue me in. I wouldn't want to be insensitive and mess up your pronouns. Then, Ben coughed and resumed the monologue. You're just like me, huh boy. All the B*cheese are giving it up to the pitbulls and junkyard chads. Arf. Meanwhile, here we are sitting all alone. Playing with our chew toys. Arf. Ben spread a helpless smile. I'd offer to make you my battle pet, but I fear you'll live longer than me. Arf. Arf. Well, you don't have to rub it in. Arf. That's quite an impressive vocabulary. Mr. Romero. An elderly woman in a gray sweater walked out of the staff office. Yes. Is there something else I can help you with? Ben tilted his head. Don't I need to fill out some tax-related forms or something? Normally yes, but I think you'll be fine, sir. He blinked. What do you mean? Well, you've donated $27.36, sir. I see. Ben gave a goodbye pat to the shaggy pooch. I'm sure it's tough being a dog, but worry not, you'll get a humanoid form once your shtick gets old. Arf. Before leaving, Ben checked his canine friend's name tag. It read, Chekhov's dog. Strange name. Did you belong to a Russian? Well, I'm sure he left you for a reason. Ben was back in his dorm room, sitting at his desk. Holding a pen, he was writing something, a doc that you meant number 18-year-old should have to create. Last will and testament. It wasn't a thing he ever thought he'd be writing anytime soon, but he had to face the facts. His story was approaching the endgame. And if Ben died today, he didn't believe there would be a convenient second part where he resurrected through the power of time travel paradoxes. In the first place, I don't have a friend who can invent a time machine in the space of the world's most convenient afternoon. On top of that, technology in the real world is too far behind, the pop culture pseudo science just isn't there yet. Soon, he finished his will. It wasn't a long doc that you meant, but it still consisted of his few precious heirlooms. Although his stuff wasn't worth much, to the right person, it would be an otaku's treasure chest. In the ways of the otaku, Ben still held some pride in his status as an ancestor. As such, he didn't want his legacy discovered by the next bastard protagonist to inherit this system and stumble on his bones. I wish I could leave my soul remnant in a vintage hentai manga take over the body of the next bastard to violate it. Instead, all of Ben's things would go to his family. Speaking of it, I should give them a call. He picked up his cell. Ring ring, hello. His mother answered. Mom, it's Ben. Oh. Benny. Dear, have you been eating well? Do you need anything? Is everything okay? Ben felt warmth in his chest. Because he spilled hot coffee on it just now. A short time later. Sorry, Mom. Everything's going great. Ben didn't want to worry his parents, even if it gave them only one more day of peace. He felt terrible over what they'd have to go through when he passed. They chatted for a few minutes before his mother said, Hold on, let me get your father. Ben heard footsteps and voices, then his father picked up the phone. Benjamin. Hey, Dad. It's good to hear from you, son. How's everything at school? It's good. Then his father looked around to make sure his mother wasn't nearby. Listen, son. I forgot to have this talk with you before you left for school, but the jet season was coming up, you understand. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that while you're over there, you're doing the right things. So, tell me, are you using condoms? Is he really trying to have the talk now? Ben didn't respond. I can sense your hesitation over the phone, son. Well, we can't change what's in the past. What's sprayed is sprayed. I know over there you're going to parties, meeting girls. Sometimes, maybe you forget to bring a Jimmy hat with you. It happens to the best of us. Well, for that situation, let me tell you about a little system I discovered when I was in college. I used it foolproof for decades until you were born. It's called the pull-out meth, Dad. Put Lucas on the phone, please. All right, son. We'll continue this talk later. A while later. Son, I've got Lucas here. Thanks, Dad. Oh, and that I just wanted to say that I love you. Tell Mom I said it for her as well. Sure thing, son. We love you too. I'll give the phone to your little brother now. Hello. An adolescent spoke. Lucas, it's Ben. Hey. Hey, that I know I never said this to you before. So I just wanted to let you know that I love you. Fag *OT. He hung up. Ben stared a few seconds at his cell phone. Then, he walked over to his will, picked up his pen, finalized it, and signed. The last action was writing in the name of his cousin, Antonio. Under that, he crossed out a name, Lucas.